Welcome to Anything But Ordinary, the podcast that explores the extraordinary world behind the world, the unordinary people and businesses that create the extraordinary bubble around high-profile lives. I am Zoe Jackson, and in each episode I sit down with inspiring individuals, from founders and creators to pioneers and disruptors, who are redefining success and carving out their own paths in business and in life. We dive into the personal challenges, triumphs and turning points that make their journeys anything but ordinary. This show is your reminder that success isn't one size fits all, and life really is anything but ordinary. Hello and welcome to this episode with Tim. Tim, thank you so much for joining me. I am thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Zoe. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, and we'll get to that for sure. But Tim, look, obviously we've just had that intro into you. You've obviously built a phenomenal business. With over 23 years in the health and fitness industry, you've worked with some amazing clients, so including international athletes, Premier League football players, top CEOs. What was the beginning of the journey? How did the journey start?
Well, to be completely honest, I'll just say it's all by accident. End of podcast.
Yeah.
No. It was a lot of fortunate timing, especially early on. I mean, my beginnings were in New Zealand. I did a physiotherapy degree, and my passion was sport. Now, the reason I can go into my history where I spent most of the time injured rather than on the rugby field. That's what led me into physiotherapy. Grew up and did sports physiotherapy in New Zealand. Travelled with that over to the UK. I was touring with an international rugby team. And after the tournament was finished, I actually wanted some time off. So I wanted to meet up with some friends in the south of France, and we decided to work on super yachts. And I just happened to answer an ad that wanted a deckhand. Those are the yacht crew that wash the boat and get all the tenders, the little boats ready and so forth, and anchor and docking, all that sort of stuff. And I answered a request for a deckhand that also has personal training experience. And through my experience with working with sports teams, I work very closely with the strength and conditioning guys. So there's a lot of overlap. And so I answered that job, and lo and behold, it worked out well. And I was only on the boat for about 30 days, and then the family asked me to come back to London with them. So I thought that would be a sort of a 6-month job, and ended up working exclusively for that family for I think it was about 8 or 9 years. And I'm now 20 years on from when I arrived in London, and I'm still here, and I have a couple of businesses.
Wow, that's amazing. It's just such an example of sometimes how opportunity can just literally come knocking. In a way, it's just taking that opportunity there as well.
Totally, yeah, and just being right place, right time, but also open to it, I guess, is part of it. Absolutely. I mean, I think when we first met, you were working for a billionaire family. Is that the same family that took you from the yachts, or was that a different family? Same family, yeah. Same
crazy.
Family. Yeah.
Okay, so my next question was going to be, how did that happen? From, when we met, obviously you were working for that family, but that was the story. So you met on the yachts, and they just snapped you up and took you back to London.
Exactly. I travelled the world with them, and they treated me really, really nicely. It was great. It was a great experience. But all good things must come to an end, and being exclusive with that family, obviously there's a very roof above my head in terms of growth, my own business growth. I had to branch out, and I wanted to build something of my own. So that's when I split away, and on good terms. I mean, I still see a couple of the family regularly as clients, but I don't work exclusively for them anymore.
Yeah.
But what that's allowed me is to build my business, build businesses that are of interest to me, and that I've been able to do through a really beneficial network. Yeah.
And I guess, being introduced to that certain level from the yachting industry. So going from, I guess, physiotherapy, like you say, you and your mate just going, let's go and join the yachts, to having this unreal opportunity on the yachts and be like, okay, this is a bit bonkers and a bit crazy. Coming to London and open up this whole world of opportunity for you is, amazing. Really.
Yeah. It's funny because for many years onwards, and I think probably even to this day, despite who I was working for, my mum would still call and say, are you sure you don't want to just come home to New Zealand and start a clinic? Like everyone else, you wanted me to be,
follow that, just
follow that normal routine. And I was like, I'm loving what I've built here and so forth. So no.
Yeah. But I think, and having that door open then, of course, like you say, allowed you to build like a stronger network and other connections, which then empowered you to be able to make these other businesses later on in your career. So was there ever a moment in this time when you're building these businesses, because you've got several, and I know that it's definitely happened with me and it happens to a lot of people, that imposter syndrome?
Oh, totally.
Has crept in.
It crept in. It's been living there rent-free my entire life. It's still there now, and I think I've heard a quote that if you have those that are aware or think they have imposter syndrome is actually a good thing. It's the arrogant types that think they know it all is where you run into problems. It's that saying that the more you know or the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's so true. So I guess it's kind of getting to grips with the imposter syndrome and sort of just feeling things out, because there's certainly no degree or coaching towards the sort of job that I sort of fell into. I had to sort of make that up as I went, and then to deciding what I needed to do next or what I wanted to build on my own. There's no template for that.
No.
So it's exciting, but there's obviously a lot of mistakes along the way, and there's a lot of umming and ahhing and self-doubt, and of course imposter syndrome.
Well, I think that mistakes are only sometimes they're good things, because actually we learn from mistakes.
100%.
And mistakes can then, you can take that lesson away from that mistake and go, okay, let's do it differently next time. And I think, as you say, of course, imposter syndrome. I think someone who came on a guest recently, or last year I should say, they said something along the lines of being comfortable in the uncomfortable. So get comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Totally.
Which is obviously a similar thing to imposter syndrome. But I think it's a bit nicer way of saying it, because
totally.
All that it is with imposter syndrome is that you're challenging yourself. And to challenge yourself, you have to be uncomfortable. Yeah. Right?
No, I agree. And to be honest, when I in physiotherapy, we have a course which is exercise prescription. So we're a qualified exercise prescription, but my experience, and I didn't have any formal qualifications in personal training, yet that became a big part of what I did when I got to London. And it was something that I was very passionate about. So I had no doubt in my own ability to feel my way through, but that feeling of imposter syndrome, like I'm a physiotherapist, how can I brand myself a personal trainer? And yes, there's a lot of crossover, but it certainly weighed on me. But if anything, it motivated me, in any downtime that I had. I mean, you know what it's like to work for this sort of demographic. There's you're on and off, you're on call, but you do have downtime. So I tried to make the most of my downtime and get as upskilled as I could in other areas, whether that was the strength and conditioning, which I'd learned from working with the rugby teams, but also personal training and sort of digging into that area and courses based on that, courses based on nutrition. And ultimately it was great, because I was able to concentrate on courses and education that I guess not just benefited me, but ones that I was interested in. Yeah. But at the same time, it was spurred by a feeling of imposter syndrome that I needed to fix.
Yeah, to learn all these things.
Yeah, totally.
Because I guess if you're thrown into a situation like you were, and you perhaps didn't have all those tick boxes, although you were able to teach it and you were teaching it quite well, and your client was very happy, like you say, you'd be like, okay, maybe I need to go away and I want to be able to give a next level up to this person.
I wanted to be the best.
You want to be the best.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you want to be able to deliver the best that you can, and that's kind of the fear, but also that fear drives you, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Amazing. So, Tim, you're managing an online platform, which is Prime Body.
Yep.
You've got Apex, which is the agency. You still work with your private clients?
A couple, yeah.
I mean, managing those three things, you've probably got other stuff going on which you're not telling me as well. I know that you're obviously on the podcast today, and there's lots of other stuff perhaps you're doing like that this year as well. What habits do you think and behaviours have you learnt to adopt perhaps that have enabled you to balance that all out and keep it all going?
All the wrong ones. All the wrong ones. Because I've had very limited structure. I was thinking about this the other day, that In fact, after we touched base, but it was, I've loved the idea that I was working for a clinic in New Zealand, physiotherapy, and that had a lot of structure. But when you come and work, and I fell into the job that I fell into, because it's on call and because you have to be adaptable, you have to be very malleable, as you know.
Yeah.
And so there's very little experience in maintaining structure. Because I've always been on the go. I've not been really able to schedule much. I'd always have to fit in my life and whatever else around my clients. So now that I came away from that and I'm building my own business, well, now you need the exact opposite. You need structure.
Yeah.
And you need to. So that has been a real big pain point for me. And one of the biggest, I think, in recent years is meeting my now fiance. Like she did a lot to help me towards creating structure and so forth, and also getting some other coaching, sort of business coaching, which I've undergone. But in terms of me getting, I guess, juggling those three areas of my life beforehand, it was basically just putting out fires and doing whatever I could. But I think what spurned that is I always got very bored doing the same thing, which is why I enjoyed the opportunity that when it presented itself, because hey, I could do physiotherapy and strength training and get into nutrition. So there's a Tim Ferriss quote, which is specialization is for insects, and I really like that, because I always felt like I never wanted to do just working in a physio clinic. I never wanted to be just a PT. It was something that I enjoyed doing. So I have all these options and I start all these things, but then of course now it's this juggle that I need structure to be able to keep juggling these things. I need a little bit of structure around them.
Yeah, but it's good to have both though. And I think actually, perhaps like with your career, having worked for, gone training and worked for, obviously you worked for the rugby team and then on to yachting, the yachts, and then for private clients. But like you say, because it's so up in the air with private clients, you're on call, it's very, very problem, firefight, get it done now kind of stuff, or be there, or whatever it might be. I think it actually teaches you as well to not, so you almost learn not to be structured in a way, which I think you need a bit of both when you're running multiple businesses. So you need to be able to
100%.
firefight really quickly, because could you imagine someone, not there's anything wrong with it, but some people brains work slightly differently and they have to be so structured that they really enjoy a 9 to 5 job, or really like clocking in, clocking out. But if that's what you're used to, you're probably not going to be able to perhaps run a business or multiple businesses. Yeah,
it's funny you say that, because instantly I'm thinking of a number of trainers who are friends and people in my industry. And I guess for personal trainers, we're almost teaching our clients that structure, because we want them to structure fitness into their lifestyle. But a lot of trainers have that structure in their life as well. They're like, here's my schedule. This is where you fit in. And yes, you can see how that's very beneficial for that one business, if that's whether they want to go all in on. But being very malleable is not the greatest if you want to diversify or do other things.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned before, I have the agency Apex, and I've brought a couple of trainers on board, and one of them had a job where he was needed to be on call. He was going away with these clients and so forth, and he just really couldn't take it. And it wasn't really that big of a deal. The times and hours that he was being asked to work. And it was just fascinating to me that some people can be so malleable that to the detriment of being able to explore something which could be really really good for them, for their career.
But I just think, everyone's brain works very, very differently, and that's what makes some people really want to be entrepreneurs. And other people very, very happy, perhaps doing something that they find very rewarding in a very different way.
Totally.
So, that's what makes you a great entrepreneur.
And struggle and juggling. Good at juggling.
Good at juggling. Yeah, good at firefight is what I always say.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So look, the global, we mentioned it on the intro, the global fitness industry is worth something, or estimated to be worth something like $257 billion US dollars. It's crazy. That is a big chunk of money. So for someone like yourself, how do you carve your own unique brand, your own uniqueness, I guess, within that industry? And how do you do that with your messaging and your marketing? Like how do you make it unique to you?
I would just say it sounds really cliche, but just being authentic. And I think that the risk And now day and ages, now we have things like ChatGPT, and already I've
actually
heard
brilliant.
Yeah, no, it is brilliant.
But I bet very barely use it. But yeah,
no, I do. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
But what I people need to be aware is it's very, especially in, I think my industry is one of the rare industries where AI is a long way off from being able to do what we do. So it's actually a very safe industry. But a lot of people, I think, it's good to use ChatGPT and it's good to amplify your message. But I've heard of trainers, this happened just the other day, who are literally using ChatGPT to send their clients motivational messages, which is just ridiculous because
do their clients like it?
No,
They find it irritating.
This client received it, and I don't know this trainer, but it said at the bottom, this is an example of a motivated message that you can send your client. And she copy and pasted that. So she actually pasted that. So the client knew that she just copy and pasted it.
Oh no.
So I guess my point is that if you're using it to amplify what your message is, that's great. But if you start to use it to do everything, well, if you want to stand out, as you asked the question, if you want to stand out in the health and fitness industry, people buy into authenticity. I think there's never been a bigger time where people are buying into individuals rather than businesses.
Buy into people, people buy into people, and it's come back around for sure.
Exactly, which is great. But then if you start to outsource too much of that to ChatGPT, or you try and copy other people, as another example, you lose your authentic voice, and that's the reason. It may very well be the reason that people signed up to or wanted to follow you in the first place. Yeah. So people are kind of doing themselves a disservice. So you can still take shortcuts with ChatGPT, but you can't outsource your own voice and your own message. Yeah. So being authentic, I think, is a big one. And we talked about this briefly before the podcast. Is being open to opportunities. If you're walking down with your head down and you're constantly mulling and maybe not in the best frame of mind, you're not going to be open to new avenues, and that's huge in business. You never know what's going to come around the corner. If you keep your feelers out there. Yeah, I think a positive. Positive mindset. A really, really easy thing to throw out there and say, and I think a positive mindset. It's so true. Yeah, is key. Yeah, really. And it's hard, we'll have very, days where everything goes wrong. Even if you've started the best, day with the best intentions, you've done everything like you do every single morning, and something's just gone like that, and then it's thrown you off kilter. But I think if you're able to somehow find that positive mindset within that, whatever methods you use and whatever, perhaps, you listen to certain podcasters or whoever, or certain methodologies. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. It really is about being open and staying positive, because it's just random when these doors open at the right time, and it always tends to be when you're out looking and you're happy. When I parted from the family that I came to London with, I parted from them exclusively. I happened to meet a guy who's a really good friend of mine now, Lee Mullins, who ran Bulgaria Gymnasium. So in the Bulgaria, they have workshop gymnasium, and that's based in the Bulgaria. So it's a very similar demographic, ultra high net worth, and just out of coincidence, knew someone who introduced us, and that also helped me branch out. It's just these doors just open, Yeah. I think in life I've probably had very similar experiences when I've been happy and my energy is good, that energy then has somehow attracted like these really positive experiences and people and opportunities, which is fortunate, but it's also taking hold of those things with both hands and totally with it and doing it. I would just add one more thing to building your own brand in the competitive environment, and that is something that I think we're all guilty of, and I was definitely doing it for far too long before launching, or early on in launching Prime Body, and that is comparing myself to others. Like, again, it ties in, I think, to that imposter syndrome a little bit as well, but this, especially with social media now, it's very easy to compare and think of such and such is doing so much better, and honestly, that does nothing but create that negative mindset. Yeah. And if you can just focus on what you're doing, the times where I've focused on just what I'm doing and what I want to build is when I've had the most progress in building Prime Body. Yeah, I agree. Actually, as a business owner, I really agree, because I think I would look at originally when I first started, to spend a lot of time looking at perhaps other agencies. What are they posting? What are they saying? What are they doing? And feeling slightly deflated if I felt that their business looked like it was doing much better than we were. They're much busier. Why are they getting this client and that client, and perhaps I'm not?
And when I stopped doing all of that and just centered in about who do I want to be and who do I, want what do I want our agency to look and feel like, and our values, and, changed like my thought pattern on that and really focus in, things changed.
Yeah, got better.
So do you actually follow people, other fitness platforms? Do you spend time looking at what other people are doing, or do you just kind of look and then just
I think
really
when I was building, I restructured my online platform last year, and it's been great. I've had really good growth the last 2 years, and it's I've looked at others for inspiration, but it's never there's never been anything that I've wanted to copy, but it's just always good to see how what things works. What works. But I think everyone does it. There's nothing. It's finding that border between doing your market research, but also staying authentic, not just to your own voice, but what you want to build. Because if you do copy someone else's, you're always going to get caught out. Like, this is the thing. It's you've got to just be genuine. And again, it sounds very cliche, but you've got to be your own voice.
Yeah, be your own voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When we were chatting, so we've chatted beforehand, before you came in as a guest, and I didn't actually know, so I'm so sorry, Tim. I didn't know that you had a snowboarding accident in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then obviously, as you said, I'll have a look at, this morning. Was it this morning you were on?
It was on. I was on this morning, and I was also on the BBC. It was
talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty. Life changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did that change slightly a course in your life?
Massively. Massively. It had a really. It's crazy to think back on, but it's.
What happened? You were snowboarding in Switzerland.
Yeah, I was snowboarding off piste and by myself, which was a bit stupid. I'd done it my whole 15 years before snowboarding. I learnt to snowboard actually because I used to travel with this family that we talked about. And so I would do physiotherapy with them in the evening, and during the day I could go and snowboard. So I learnt snowboarding, and I was always very safe on the slopes. And this place in Switzerland, I didn't know they had crevasses, which are basically just big ridges? Divides and ridges in the ice, and they can be loosely covered with snow. And you need to be very careful when you go off piste. Well, I was off on just a solo holiday. Things weren't great in my relationship at the time. She'd gone to a trip of her own with some friends, and I just went by myself last minute. This happened. The ground gave way. I fell into this crevasse. 10 meters down, and somehow I had a blinking sort of reception.
My goodness.
Yeah, at the top of the mountain, at the very top of the mountain.
It's like the kind of thing you would watch on a movie and think, like, how were they going to get themselves out of that situation?
Yeah.
And you think, in real life, they're never going to.
Yeah. The clip's on is on my Instagram. It's also on YouTube. It's harrowing to see.
So how did you video it?
I had my phone, and the whole thing was my phone was actually only had 3% battery to make things even worse. You'll see on the video, the issue was that my battery booster I had in my backpack, but the way that I fell, I was wedged between these two walls of ice. So in order to get my battery booster out of my backpack, I had to take my backpack off, and that was an ordeal in itself. Once I had the battery booster, I had already contacted emergency services by using the 5-click button on your phone, which is very handy.
Yeah, I didn't know about the 5-click.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing I just would love to circulate, is everyone needs to know that's the emergency call button. And it went straight to emergency services in Switzerland. And once I'd done that, I said, I've got 3%, stay off your phone. I said, yeah, okay, I've got a battery booster. So anyway, I managed to get that out. And once I had the battery booster, I had it at, a sudden thought, well, what if I don't get found? I'll need to say tell people what happened. So I recorded a little selfie video, and then a second one when I heard the helicopter, when I knew things were going to be okay. But it really was the most what's the word? It was like the premium near-death experience, in that I had a fracture of my foot, but I didn't notice it at that time. I literally landed upright. My board caught me. So to look back on it, it's I can go crazy thinking about what could have been, but
of course, yeah.
But it's probably shaped. It's been one of the best moments of my life, and I know it sounds really strange to think about, but it really just reset a lot of things in my life.
I've got so many questions now.
Go on.
I'm thinking. So there's questions I want to talk about how it has reshaped your life and
Yeah.
reset it. But just going back to that moment when you're in, is it
The crevasse.
Yeah, the crevasse.
Yeah.
Like, how, like, I can imagine, I'm just trying to take myself
Of
there and
course,
think,
yeah.
what was it, like a sense of calmness that came over to you where you were able to think quite logically and clearly about what you're going to do? What's the next step? How am I going to do this? Or was it complete panic? I'm assuming from the fact you were able to get
Yeah.
out of the situation that something clicked in.
It's really funny you say that. People watch the video and they say, I don't know how you were so calm. Look, if I was there for another 3 or 4 hours, I'm sure I would have descended into a lot of panic.
Yeah.
I was actually only in there for an hour total, I think it was, almost to the minute. That's how great the emergency services were. Shout out to Swiss Alps emergency services. But there was the first instance that you mentioned. Like once it happened, it's crazy to say it wasn't just adrenaline, because I've had adrenaline surges before. But if you could get a tablet of what my brain was on in those moments, everyone would take it daily.
Yeah.
It was just
We'd all be running our businesses.
There were 1,000 thoughts a second, and I was comprehending every single one, and I was working out what the situation meant and what I needed to do and what were the options and and it was mad. I mean, I didn't think it was great at the time, but to think back, I was like, wow, that was some powerful stuff that my brain was on. It was fascinating. The after effect was, it was again all the sort of cliche stuff. Why am I taking life so seriously? Like I'm now living on borrowed time. Like everything didn't seem quite so
dramatic
important.
as it was.
Yeah, exactly. And it was tough. It was tough coming back because the relationship that I had at the time was not a good one. We were both good people. We just didn't work.
The right people. Yeah.
And so it was coming out of there with what's called post-traumatic growth. I saw a therapist that said, look, you sound like you're dealing with it really well. You've got a good support network. So you have post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic
Never
stress.
heard of post-traumatic growth.
Neither had I, but I was definitely top of the world.
Yeah.
And they said, be warned, in a week's time, you're going to crash. And I did crash. I was exhausted. Don't know whether that was the concoction of my brain that from the event or whatever, but I didn't crash in a negative way. What the tricky thing was is that I was like, I'm not going to let anything bother me. Everything's going to be great. Life is amazing. But at the same time, it did compound with the dilution, how do you say it? The dissolving of my relationship. And I realized afterwards that was not necessarily a negative thing. It was something that had to happen. But it was quite hard dealing with this positivity of post-traumatic growth, but also watching my relationship disintegrate.
Yeah.
But we're better off. We're both better off without it.
Without each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously then things. So you say you kind of relit something inside you. You came away with this post-traumatic growth, which then maybe perhaps opened up other stuff for you.
Yeah.
Including perhaps meeting your wife to be.
Well, exactly. So it did. I mean, I don't mean it to sound callous, but when the relationship sort of ended, it was kind of just this acceptance, because I was like, look, I'm living on borrowed time. What will be, and it was I was very much kind of easier with it than I probably would have been without. Same thing with my business. My businesses did. I think I got really lucky, and my businesses did really well that year. And I don't know whether that was just because I was like, look, it's not such a big a deal. I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to enjoy. I was. I did meet my now fiance later that year. She was in a toxic relationship of her own, and that we kept in touch. We were good friends, and then almost a year to the day we started dating, and it was from the accident. So it was I think that had I been in a different mindset or not had my accident, I don't know if I would have met her or been the guy that I was when I met her versus the guy that I was before the accident. Does that make sense?
Do you know, it's a beautiful thing about life, that there are like many different parallels and the way things can go. And you're very fortunate, of course, that you were able to come out of which could be much more tragic than it was. with your accident and come away with this completely different mindset.
Exactly. Yeah. I've told her that before. I said, you know, that if I'd met you before the accident, this wouldn't be. Yeah. Probably wouldn't be.
But you
here.
might not. Yeah, you may not have been the person for her.
Totally.
As well. She
totally.
Perhaps not looked at you in the same way. So
no,
crazy, isn't it?
It was weird. It was weird timing. And you know, to get things back into the business side of things, I touched on her involvement. Before she's from Brazil, and she worked. She didn't come from money or anything. She worked her ass off to get out of Brazil and came to London. And she's very structured. She has that structure, and she has that mentality. So she was someone that, to meet her, and she was never critical of how I ran my business. She's aware of my 5 monkeys in my brain. And she accepts it. But she was like, you need to do, you know, you should get some more structure, and you should do some coaching, so forth. And so she's kind of responsible for my growth and my app in the recent years, because she's really helped me with that. So again, Brilliant. It's just another door. Obviously, I love her for other reasons other than helping
Not
my
just
business.
Helping you with your business.
But it was that as well. And so she wasn't just the right person for me, I think, emotionally, but also business wise, we really comfort each other. Yeah. Sorry, not comfort, but we
complement.
Complement. That's the word. Yeah.
I think it's when you see a lot of successful business men or women, perhaps often they've got someone next to them who's quite strong and has complimented 100%. Them in some way and helped, whether that's like very evidently, so they're very open with the fact that they work together or not, perhaps. They support in other ways. So that's brilliant.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. And that's when you know you've got a keeper. Yeah. Right? You know?
So is she involved in the business as well? Or
no, she works in sort of busy corporate, and she's very successful in her own right. But she and she's got a passion project of her own, which is great. But we tried the working together thing, and that's a tricky one. Anyone that can do that in a relationship it's tough. I mean, she still advises me, but she said early on we tried a few little sort of projects with my online platform, and she was you know, she sort of stepped back and said, I don't want to get too involved with this because it's very hard.
Fair enough, yeah. Exactly. I mean, I always take my hat off. As you know, I work in private staffing now, recruiting for private staff in private households. And of course, you get couples, married couples that will be recruited as domestic couples. Yep. And I have met people that have been married for like 30 years and worked together for 25 of those years, and I think, how on earth? How? What secret ingredient do you have? I don't know, but somehow it works. So I
think Rosa can deal with the monkeys in my brain on an emotional level. I think to deal with those monkeys that when they're in work mode, I think it's just too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's I mean, it's brilliant that all this good stuff has come out of that accident. So with your mindset, do you have many, do you listen to like many podcasts, or do you have people that you follow? And
big podcast. I think podcasts are one of the best source of information now, because they allow these long form conversations and so forth. I'm a big podcast fan. I think I was a fan from when they first came out. I don't even know what year with it. I think Ricky Gervais had one of the first ones ever to be released, and I listened to that straight away. Yeah, I've been a big fan for a long time, and now obviously I have my sort of work and business related ones, and I have my ones that I listen to enjoy. I think it's such a helpful medium for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to one the other day with Jay Shetty, and everyone listens to Jay Shetty. I mean, he's brilliant. But he said something along the lines of, and I think it was a football coach of his, and I'm repeating this now third hand, something along the lines of, it's about resilience. So if you go out and you lose, then cry for a night, get up and train the next day. If you go out and you win, go home, celebrate, train the next day. Yep. Like really, and that stood out for me, because I was like, yes, that is such it's underpinning what resilience really is. Have you adopted anything in your working with like methods to deal with resilience?
100%. I think you have to when you're starting your own business, because there's a lot of times where you try something and it doesn't work, and it's like, all right, well, you go and you do something else the next day. It's chop wood, carry water. You just get back into that routine. It's also what as coaches we tell our clients. It's like, it doesn't matter whether you've had a good day or a bad day. You go to the gym the next day. It's programmed. It's part of it. Like it's a non-negotiable. And I think it's a really important mindset to have, as well as to celebrate the small wins. You have a win, you celebrate it. You don't go crazy.
Don't celebrate for a year.
Exactly. And don't go off road and undo all the good work. Exactly. But celebrate, reward yourself, because nothing's more motivating than when you reward yourself.
Yeah.
You know? And that was something I sort of suffered from, again, until this accident, until I had a different mindset. That's when it all started to change. I think I was very hard on myself, and I was always thinking, because when you're trying to build businesses, you're constantly critical about all the stuff you're doing. And when you learn to not be so critical is when the good things happen. Yeah. And I heard a quote the other day, and I'll probably butcher this, but I think it was great. It was like, don't forget to appreciate the mountain you're standing on before admiring the mountain in the distance. You know, and I think we're all guilty of that.
One, yeah.
We see something in the distance. Oh, I need to do this. Oh, I'm not where that person is, and all this stuff. But you don't realize, you don't look back. And this is another thing that my partner says to me, is like, look at what you've built. Like whenever I'm hard on myself, and it's so true. I think comparison is the theft of joy. It's totally that.
We must be kinder to ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's a big it's a big motivation changer as well, because when you're feeling shit, you don't want to, excuse my language.
No, we can definitely use that language.
When you're feeling like that, the last thing that you want to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But when you're positive, and as you said, when things don't go your way, if you've got that structure of, okay, this didn't work, well, onto the next thing. You just get, regardless of whether there's a good result or a bad result, you get back into what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think as well, if you've got like your 5 monkeys in your head, and there's so many spinning plates, there's only so much time for everything.
Totally.
And I think sometimes we do put so much pressure on that to-do list of us getting everything done that we think we need to get done to get to the point we want to get to. And now there's only so much time. So we have to be kind to ourselves. So what we, like your wife has said, you've got to look at what you have done and what you have achieved.
Yeah, totally.
It's very important.
Yeah, and we're always guilty of it. And this is another point where social media kind of trips us up, because you look at the motivational
such
speakers.
An important thing, social media, but also it can be
like, oh, you only need to sleep 4 hours and you should be doing this, and this is how you should be structuring your day. I get up at 5 a.m. and da 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 da.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's just makes people want to compare themselves and feel rubbish about how they're doing. On that note, there's a really great book by Oliver Burkeman called Meditations of Mortals, I think it's called. Okay. It's nothing to do with meditating, but he talks about how to stop, talk kindly to yourself, stop setting yourself these great expectations, and things will maybe get done or they won't get done, but how your mindset isn't going to change that. But you can either have a positive mindset, as you said before, and be easy on yourself, or you could be negative and sort of kick yourself and talk negative to yourself. But that doesn't change the situation that you're in.
No, you can't. Yeah, it isn't. That situation is the situation until the next day when maybe you can do something.
But being positive is likely going to make that situation better in the future. So why are we beating ourselves up all the time?
Yeah, so true. I like it. So where you're at now with Prime Body and Apex, what's next?
Oh, no.
So we're in January now. So actually, did you set yourself any? No, I don't like to call them resolutions. Actually, I like to call them like intentions for the year. Have you got intentions for the year?
I do actually. I don't have a fitness one. The fitness is it's part of my life. I just do it. But my I talked briefly about this before this podcast, and this is again that crazy timing. I set myself the challenge of doing stuff like this, podcasts and talking to public speaking. Yeah. Because I hadn't, and the reason that I hadn't done it as much in the past comes down to that imposter syndrome. Yeah. And it's crazy, and I think that's if there's been one handbrake in my career, it's probably been that and being worried to put myself out there. I was actually a bit of a late adopter to Instagram, and anyone in fitness is very important to have an Instagram. I wish I had got on that bandwagon sooner, but I was sort of afraid to put myself out there. And I said, I'm going to do more public speaking, more podcasts, and I haven't gone out to schedule anything. And I told you this before. I got on my LinkedIn, and there was a message from you from years ago, and we hadn't touched base.
I think it was probably about 5-6 years
ago. Yeah. And had I have had Apex,
then I would have. I was like,
yeah. And had I have had Apex, I would have been able to help you out. But it was when I got in touch with you, you said, "Oh, by the way, I have a podcast." And I was like, "This is just crazy timing," because I've literally said that this is what I'm going to do more of this year. lo and behold, here we are.
Mm-hmm. But I love your intentions for the year.
Yeah.
I think, as you say, it's building upon where you've already got to, and it's challenging the imposter syndrome or being comfortable in the uncomfortable. But it's like building blocks, isn't it?
Totally.
Because you've got to a great place with Prime Body, and that's growing, and Apex, but now it's actually personal growth, really.
Totally. Yeah. And that's a big one. And we touched on this before as well, as with AI, with ChatGPT, I mean, you read articles, you don't know whether articles are made by ChatGPT, and people are buying into individuals and personal brands. So I think it's a perfect time to be out there and talking, because people, I think people are just sick of the robots and they're sick of the mainstream media, you know?
It's so funny because actually so many people I've spoken to have been, that has been the conversation. A lot of people have said similar things, whether they're in marketing or they're building up businesses. They've noticed as well, maybe it's a little bit on the back of, the pandemic, where beforehand everyone was kind of in that world of social media. Then they got more involved with being very much online. And then, the years following, people have wanted to reconnect and get to know people again and feel like they trust that person because of who they personally are, like whether that's a brand or business or a person.
Totally. But, it's so true. And that's the thing, people that aren't trying to reconnect, I think that's the biggest fear. I mean, my biggest concern is you think about the kids, the kids that, being young at that time must have been very, very crazy. And also the social media, we talked about the danger in comparison, and God, it must be tough being younger. Imagine being a teenager right now. It must be tough. Yeah.
I think for us, we couldn't get it like my son, for example, who's 10, who has to show me how to put my phone on silent because they just brought up in a world where that is just simply the normality. Where for me, I kind of got a Nokia at 15. I think I played Snake or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think we were we were around the perfect time zone, weren't we?
Yeah,
I think I was a bit older than you, but it was perfect time where you had to socialise up until after you sort of uni, and then you got smartphones. It was good.
Yeah,
it was good timing.
It was good timing. So I think really to close, what would be the most unordinary piece of advice that you would like to share with our listeners, or a piece of advice that you might want to share just because it's something you think that's an important bit of messaging?
I think I would go back to that point of not being so hard on yourself, because that's where I've noticed when I've started to put less pressure on myself, I'm more productive. And you know what? This is a shout out to a guy who was a PT and now he's an entrepreneur. He does very well. His name's Phil Lurney, and I had a business mentor chat with him many years ago. That was before my accident. And I said, look, I've got my clients that I still see in the morning, but I'm trying to build something. This is talking about Prime Body. But I come home sort of early afternoon, which is my time to work on my app. And all I want to do is either have a nap or do something else, because training people isn't sort of passive. It does actually wear us out. I mean, hats off to the young trainers doing 8-10 sessions a day. It's easier to handle when you're younger. But anyway, I would come home and I'd feel exhausted. And I said to this guy, Phil, I know I should be working on my app. And he said, right, Tim, first of all, delete the word should from your vocabulary, because it is a really negative one. You could say you could be doing this one. As soon as you say should, it's you can feel the anxiety build, right? Straight away. As soon as you put should in your day, you're putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. So why don't you just say, and it kind of ties into that book I mentioned by Oliver Berkman earlier, but it's just, once I learnt to do that and say, look, I might get the stuff I've planned to do today done, I might not. But it's going to be the same regardless. Yeah. And if I beat myself up and feel negative about it, I'm just going to feel rubbish all week because I didn't hit the goals that I did. And that was just a really powerful piece of advice. So delete should from your vocabulary.
Delete should from your vocabulary. Yeah. I like it. I don't think we've had any advice like that before.
Had a big effect on me. Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, just to close, just because I know that my sister-in-law will be listening, and she's PT setting up also online.
Oh yeah,
an online platform, Busy Mum too. And I'm part of an amazing gym called BSC, and they are a strength and conditioning gym. And he's a fantastic guy, Reese, that runs it. And so both of those, I said, as a business, as someone within the industry, what kind of questions, or what piece of advice would someone like Tim be giving you? So my question is, I guess, what advice would you give to people that are in the industry wanting to grow and wanting to be successful. And of course, they might be looking over their shoulder at someone like yourself and thinking, he's successful. How do I get to be there? How do I get to do it?
Yeah. Or who's your demographic that not just gravitate towards you, but that you actually enjoy coaching? Because if you're coaching people that you don't like, or you're doing something that you don't like, you're not going to have fulfillment in your job. It's not going to be your passion. So identify your niche, and as I mentioned before, be authentic. Because if you're authentic, you're going to attract those people. Do you know what I mean? And being authentic, you're not running a charade, which is what a lot of trainers do. Unfortunately, the PT business is somewhere where a lot of narcissistic people go. Okay, that's where they all start, and so they're basically living a lie or a facade their entire life. Whereas if you're genuine and you're trying to build something that's meaningful to you, people will come. And again, it's cliche, but build it and people will come. I don't know whether that helps them. It sounds like they already have their own gyms and their own platforms, but just identify your niche. Build up slowly. Do not compare yourself to how other people are doing, because you might agree with me. Like opportunity or networks, in my experience anyway, have always come from the most unlikely or unexpected places that have opened doors. It's never come from the places that you expect.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely not. It comes from those unexpected places.
Yeah.
In unordinary situations.
Totally. It's like opening my LinkedIn. This is it. Yeah.
Well, look, Tim, thank you so much for joining me for Anything But Ordinary. And it's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Anything But Ordinary. I hope the conversation gave you a little inspiration, maybe a new perspective, or just reminded you there's no such thing as a straight path when it comes to success. If you love what you heard, it would mean the world if you could follow, subscribe, or leave a little review. It really helps us keep sharing these incredible stories. And if you want to see more behind the scenes or get in touch, all the info you need is in the show notes. Until next time, keep being curious, keep challenging the ordinary, and remember, the most interesting lives rarely follow the rules.